All right, attempt number 2 here. Hi guys, my name's Eric. I'm very much a amateur cinematographer slash videographer. I wanted to just put together a quick video for discussion about some of the things that I saw at NAB that I was interested in, intrigued by, disappointed by, all that fun stuff. A lot of this discussion is going to be revolving around lighting, and one lighting company in particular, which is Aputure slash Amaran. When I started investing in different gear for video making and for photography and things like that, I tried to sort of pick and pull out of the affordable options to me the things that I thought would get the most use and would give me the most bang for the buck, focusing on things like color fidelity and ease of use. The ease of use was largely because my wife was going to be using some of this stuff as well. So I had started with the photography and things like that for her, but we quickly realized that particularly for photography, my wife has a very, very keen eye. She can set up a frame and make everything in that frame look gorgeous. I was trying to choose things that were pretty easy to use so that she didn't have to focus on the technical side as much and could just focus on the creative side. But I wanted something that sort of was more cohesive. No matter what light I was buying from that company, I wanted them all to really kind of fit well together. And obviously here on YouTube, you hear a lot about Aputure and Amaran. You can find videos about them all the time. I guess I'll talk about some of the equipment I use, why I use it, why I selected what I selected, and how I like it or don't like it. I guess my highest end or most expensive or whatever powerful light I use is the Aputure 600X. I got the 600X because I wanted something that was bicolor, so it was a little bit more versatile. That does limit, obviously, its maximum output. If you look at the 600D versus the 600X, your maximum output is higher on the D. So I ended up buying the F10 Fresnel so that when I do want more output, I can really punch that up. The Fresnel I mostly use if I'm going to be putting it through a scrim, because I have like a 5x6 scrim from IntelliTech with grid cloth and a honeycomb grid on the front of it, for when I want a bigger lighting source. And that's really worked well for me. But I would say that the 600D and 600X are really at the top end of what a content creator is probably going to invest in lighting in terms of price. Looking at some of the other types of lighting, we sort of jump into the Amaran series. And the Amaran series, again, is supposed to be their more budget-friendly series. Lighting quality is still fantastic. And so I'm actually using all Amaran lights, save for back there, in this shot with the Amaran 300C. That's their 300 watt COB RGB light. And I have the Light Dome 3 with the 2-stop diffusion and a honeycomb grid. That's my wife's key light, right? So that's the main light I use for her. Behind me used to be a 60X with the Light Dome Mini 2 on it. I had to borrow that for my setup. I'll explain that in a second. But right now I have the F21C. So it's nice because it's nice and small. I have that horizontally so it doesn't hang down as low, and it gives me more, sort of a little bit more fill and more separation from the background. My wife usually does her live streams, as I said, at night so that people can be on it and they're out of work. And so this lighting is not here. That's usually dark. And that works well. It's a great fill slash hair light. It creates this, again, separation here. And then I get a lot of wrap from the 300 because it's in a big parabolic softbox. I shoot on a C70 for her, a Canon C70 for her stuff, and that might seem overkill for some people, but for me it's a godsend. I can power it off DC power, and if something happened and the power went out and she was filming versus live streaming, the battery's always in it so that the camera won't lose power, or if something happened where the power cord got taken out. I use the 35mm because this is a Super 35 sensor. So a 35mm, which is the equivalent of like a 56mm on a full frame. Nice shallow depth of field. We're shooting at f2, I believe. But these lights work really well because they don't cause that magenta pop on her skin, and she really dislikes it. I dislike it too. I don't think it looks as nice. I don't have to worry about that quite as much because I have more of an olive skin tone, but it works well for both of us. Typically I set the lights to 5200 because as we get closer to the tungsten source and a little bit further down from the daylight source of 5600 Kelvin, again, less of that magenta tone popping out. So going to NAB, I didn't go to it, but talking about NAB, what came up there that prompted me wanting to do this video? Well, there was some announcements from Aputure, which I thought were great, with new lights and new software and things like that. Now, being that I use pretty much all Aputure lights, with save for the exception of a couple random lights that I still have, Aputure's Sidus link has been huge. It's really, really, really helpful when you're setting up a shot and the lights are not necessarily at a convenient spot for you to be able to tweak the lighting via the knobs or the ballast or whatever. But it's great to be able to pull up an app and then just kind of, I don't know if it'll focus on this. No, it won't. I'll move forward so you can see it a little bit more, but pull up an app, be able to sort the fixtures you have, click in, it'll load up the fixtures that you're using. And once it's loaded up the fixtures you're using, you can click into the fixture and then you can start setting your settings here, right? So I can set it for intensity and color and green, magenta shift and all that fun stuff. And it's been really helpful for me in a couple of scenarios. One, when I'm camera guy, sound guy, lighting guy, I'm doing all that stuff for my wife's streams, with either her live streams or her cooking show. Sometimes I don't want to move from behind the monitor or behind the camera to be able to adjust something and then have to come back and look, oh, does that look okay? But no, I can pull it up on my phone, make my adjustments. I'm looking at the monitor the whole time. Okay, well, it needs to be a little brighter. Let's bring that one up. Oh, now I'm getting a little more contrast and I'm like, let's bring up the fill a little bit. And I'm just seeing something weird with the color. Let's tweak our CCT value, or let's tweak our green magenta shift. And oh, perfect, I got it where I need it. Really helpful, even if you're not the person behind the camera, to have that degree of control where you can make all those changes and be able to sit in front of the monitor while you're doing so. So that's number one. As an individual, content creator, not working with a team, it just makes it so much more intuitive and time, efficient. But then when you're behind the camera, it's even more so. Having that app control for your lighting when you're in the shot is huge, because then I can say, okay, well, I'm sitting here, my co-host is sitting over here, and I do a cross key setup on mine. So on my setup, I use a 150C. So again, Amaran 150C. The 60X that used to be back here is the other light. And what's happening is I'm getting keyed by the 150C. The 60X is over here keying my co-host. And then we're getting fill on the other person from the other light. Now, that's not truly cross-keying. Cross-keying obviously is when you have one light over here, it's actually keying that person. The other light's over here and it's keying that person. And usually you're faced towards each other. And so my rim light is coming from her key. Her rim light is coming from my key. So it's not true cross-keying. It's more like cross-filling, if you will. But that's the way I have it set up. And it works really well for me. I'll insert at least a still or a little video of us talking on our not live streams, our video podcast. So you can see sort of what that setup looks like. T4C as our hair light. I wanted a 4-foot tube for that because it needed to span for both of us, right? So it's my hair light, her hair light. It also gives us an accentuating light, like a rim light on the back of the shoulders to separate us from the background. I have dark hair. The background's dark. Made a big difference for me. Again, using the Sidus Link app, being able to sit there on set, change all the lighting and get it just how I want it, so that when we're ready to film, it's good to go. And I know it's good to go because I was in the shot like I'm going to be when I set up the lighting. So really big for content creators who are doing everything themselves. And even for people who are sort of like a one-man band filming for somebody else, really, really helpful. What's this have to do with NAB? Well, there's a few things that were announced at NAB. I'll start with the Infinity Matte lights. The Infinity or Infinity Matte lights look awesome, but they really appear that they're going to be more geared towards professional filmmakers and probably not as much indie filmmakers. And I say that because when they were explaining the specs and how they were getting everything to work together, and how essentially you have these 2x1 mats, they're like, I don't know, this big, that all can then link together and become these massive mats. One of them was 20x20. It's huge, just massive cloud light that they made. It requires multiple ballasts to power it and control it. It requires a lot of power and very, very expensive for that size light. But even the smaller lights, I imagine, are going to be expensive. And why do I say that? Well, looking at the Amaran lights, if you look at the F22C, the F21C, they're pretty expensive for what they are. I know if you look at their Godox competitors at that size, or even more so if you look at the Falconized competitors, those are much, 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 much more affordable for the same size light and same output. Less functionality, you don't have Sidus Link or things like that, but much more affordable for providing the same amount of light and largely the same degree of light quality. So the light mats were an amazing looking tool. I do hope that they're more affordable than I suspect they're going to be, because that's definitely something I would make use of. Thinking of the 5x6 scrim that I use with my Aputure 600X, you could easily set one of those up in a 6x6 or 8x8 or 4x4 pattern to kind of look like a big scrim and have that be your big, soft, beautiful light source. I would love that. That would be my ideal scenario. One of the things that's interesting is if you use a white grid cloth or white scrim, you're just getting an oversized version of the light that you're using. When in reality, the light that hits us even from the sun is all sorts of different colors, right? It's the color of the sunlight reaching us, and then it's the environment that we're in, right? If I'm standing in a city and I'm next to a building, I might get more blues and grays mixed into the color tone because it's bouncing off of concrete buildings or asphalt ground, or I might be in a park and it could be bouncing off the green grass or trees and things like that. You can use the light mats in a similar way. Pixel control them mat to mat. So if you set them up in rows kind of like that, you could have higher intensity lighting coming from like a whitish, maybe 5600 Kelvin or subtle blue tone into it from the top. And then as you go down, you could warm it up so it's more like the green bounce that you would get from the grass. And so the light coming onto your subject would be more natural in that way. At least that's the way I viewed it. I think that's a really cool application, a really cool way to achieve that kind of lighting. And where that might make even more of a difference, if you ever watch Lewis Potts here on YouTube, he does a video about using different types of diffusion, because when you look at the highlights on reflective surfaces, when you see those in camera, if it's a light, it's all one color, right? So if you're using just regular diffusion, regular grid cloth, it's all one color and it doesn't look natural. Versus if you use these different types of diffusion options that have the multicolor diffusion or different color lighting, you can get sort of that almost rainbow effect that's true to life in what you see reflected in reflective surfaces from natural light sources. So that was a pretty cool video that he did on that, but this is some of the applications I see the Infinity Mats being used for. I don't see it being as affordable, but I hope I'm wrong. Moving on to the other major thing that they announced was the Sidus One and the Sidus Pro app. The Sidus One is essentially like a little wireless receiver box, not much bigger than like a V-mount plate. And it basically receives all the signal and input from Sidus Link, but then can output CRMX and DMX control for lights that are not Aputure. And you can also extend your reach to your Aputure lights through there as well, but it's really meant to be able to control non-Aputure lighting that you're going to integrate into an Aputure lighting system. But my fear is if you're somebody who uses regular Sidus Link now, there is a subscription model for that too. And that allows you to have access to things like the lighting diagrams and other more robust tools in the lighting system to be able to control lights in a different way. My fear with the Sidus Link Pro is that they may pull some of the functionality from Sidus Link into that and perhaps not keep it in Sidus Link, because they will want certain people to use the subscription model in Sidus Pro, and they might want them to use the higher tiers, and that's a better source of revenue for them. And as somebody who is very, very much an amateur content creator, but really enjoys the benefits of Sidus Link, that would suck. That would suck a lot, because if they start removing functionality and features because it's now being considered the thing that, Amaran users are using, and they start limiting its functionality in that way, I think that really detracts from what Aputure has been as a company for the longest time. Aputure is very much a creator lighting company, not a high-end film and production lighting company. That's not where their roots stemmed from. And if it weren't for all the content creators on YouTube and sort of smaller end indie production and creators, they wouldn't be where they're at now. And so I'm really hopeful that despite all the energy they are putting into pro level gear, again, with the light mats that are coming, with the Electrostorm lighting that they put out last year, with the infinity bars. I'm hopeful that they're not going to forget about the content creator. The other thing that kind of brought my train of thought in that direction was that they announced a more significant separation of Aputure and Amaran. And what I mean by that is Aputure and Amaran have always been the same company, but there was sort of the budget tier of lighting and there was the professional high-end tier lighting. Nanolite has the same thing. There's Nanolite and then there's Nanolux. Nanolux is like where their 2400B light is, and all their really high-end powerful lighting is in the Nanolux series, Nanolux panel lights and all that stuff, where they're creating this sort of hard separation between Aputure and Amaran, Amaran being now essentially its own company with its own R&D team, its own production, facilities. I do worry that that could affect quality. I worry that that could affect innovation. If that's not their high revenue earner, and they're focused more on quantity than they are on having a high price tier item that people are going to pay big bucks for, what is that going to do with the quality? I do already think that some of the items within the Amaran system are a little bit overpriced. No offense to Aputure or anything, but their light mats I think are way too expensive. The F22C shouldn't be an $800 something light. I understand it has a lot of functionality. I understand it has a good amount of output and it's a great light, but to be almost $1,000 in your budget friendly tier, and it's a light mat, I think that's really, really expensive. And the ballast is pretty big and clunky and all that. Mounting it on anything but a C-stand is a little bit of a pain in the ass. But I do worry that they're either going to try to make sure that everything is budget conscious and therefore they might lack in quality, or they might start stripping things back a little bit. And so my first concern is with the Sidus Link. Are we going to see that go to the wayside or get stripped down in order to allow Sidus Pro to be a more necessary option for people who are using it in a more robust way than perhaps your average content creator? So yeah, that's my main rant. I'm sorry, this is kind of a rant video from somebody who's very much an amateur cinematographer, but I think it's something that we should all be thinking about that will affect everybody who's in the content creator world, no matter how big or how small, because we all have to make choices in terms of what suits our budget and where we need to sacrifice in order to get the best we can without breaking the bank. Nobody wants to go broke doing this. So I'm hopeful that I'm wrong about several assumptions here. I'm hopeful that Amaran continues to innovate and develop really, really high quality COB lights, light mats, tube options, tube light options. And I'm hopeful that some of the Aputure products will not be out of the realm of affordability, even for content creators and indie filmmakers, because I do think they are really quality products. I hope they stay affordable. I hope that the infinity mats are affordable, because that is something I can see a lot of people getting a lot of use out of. But if they're a ton more than the F22Cs and F21Cs, I don't see content creators and indie filmmakers going that route, because I think it could just start to get too expensive. And they did talk about the whole don't be gentle, it's a rental approach to creating those. They wanted them to be very robust and be able to take some abuse going on in offsets. That worries me for their affordability, but we'll see. We'll see how things go from that respect. Anyways, let me know if you got anything out of NAB that interested you. Did you go? Did you not go? Did you watch any of the stuff from CineD or B&H or any of the content creators who covered NAB? And what did you think? What were some of the most exciting things that you saw come out at NAB? Are you going to be buying anything that you saw come out of NAB? Any lenses, lights, cameras, wireless focus tools? Looking at you, DJI. And just share with me in the comments. I'd be interested to know what you thought was the coolest stuff to come out of NAB. I will comment on one more thing that's not lighting related. Gene Nagata or Potato Jet released a new collaborative product with Small Rig, his new Tribex tripod, and it's not out yet. I guess he said it's going to come out this summer. I'm super excited for that. That product looks like it's going to be awesome. What a quick way to deploy a tripod, even better than Sackler, and that's saying something. But it'll be interesting to see when that comes out what it's going to be priced at. I'm hopeful again that it's affordable. It is a Small Rig product, and Small Rig tends to be pretty fair in their pricing, but what an innovative way to meet that sort of time hindrance that getting all the legs out and deploying it creates, and balancing the fluid head and everything. It's just a clutch that you just let it go, the legs come out in self-level, Great, I can't wait till that releases. I'll be interested in seeing if that's affordable and if I can pick one up. But let me know your favorite products that came out of NAB. Let me know what lights you're using. This was mostly a conversation about lights, and I want to know what kind of lights you were using in your setups, whether you're an indie filmmaker, whether you're a documentary filmmaker, whether you're a content creator here on YouTube, or you do photography. I'm very interested to hear what your setups include for lighting and for cameras and all that stuff. And do you think that Aputure is straying away from the content creator and mostly towards the professional? And are we going to see anything negative come in terms of Amaran products as a result of that? Leave your comments below. I hope you got something out of this video discussion. It was mostly a rant, but I hope you got something out of it, and I hope you'll share your thoughts below. And until next time, see you later.